You can press it.
No, I don't have. Oh no, I don't. Oh, it's YouTube. Oh crap.
Let me record. It's fine.
Yeah, you record. I'll just let them know 5 minutes before.
Okay,
Excellent.
cool.
Let's go. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Tools and Techniques, hosted by the Johannesburg region. This evening and basically morning in Paul's side, we will be, joined by Paul Ben, who will be taking us through starting a business analysis journey, getting out the starting blocks. And just a little bit about Paul, guys. I think most of you who have been volunteers for quite a long time, you would know that Paul is born in South Africa and now he's currently working in New Zealand. Paul, he is a great mentor and coach and also a trainer at altitude. And he has more than 20 years of experience, within the business analysis field. And he loves the community. When I mean the community, I mean our community as business analysts. And today we are so privileged and honored to have him as one of us so that he can come and share his experiences, his knowledge and insight within our field. And just before I can hand over to Paul, just some of the house rules that I would like to take you through. So basically, we are expected to remain muted and not to share our cameras, videos on. Only Paul will be allowed to have his video on. The session will take 45 minutes and then we'll move into Q&A that will take us 15 minutes. Please use the chats and Q&A sections to post any questions that you might have for Paul, and he will answer these questions at the end of his presentation. As you might know now, we are live on YouTube. So if you'd like to go back and view this video, please just see the video on YouTube by just searching by IIBA South Africa. Lastly, if you would like to be a member to our chapter, the IIBA South Africa, please visit our website on iibasa.org. And now I would like to hand over to Paul. And yes, good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning, everyone. Awesome to be here. I'm just trying to share my screen and it looks like I've got that same problem again, guys. I can't share the screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, it came up now. It seems to be a delay. Sorry about that. Okay. You can just give me a thumbs up, someone, if you can see the screen, that'd be great.
Yep.
Yep, cool, awesome stuff. Okay, right. So before I start, I do suffer from dry mouth when I talk, particularly when I talk a lot. So if you see me drinking some water, rest assured I'm okay. I just need to keep myself watered and hydrated and that. So what I'm going to be talking about today is starting a business journey. And a lot of what I'm going to kind of go through today, and obviously guys, in 30 to 45 minutes, I can't go through everything, but I'm just going to give you the highlights of my experience over 27 years of being a business analyst and in some sense being a serial job hunter. And that all started because one day after my first VA gig in South Africa, I was offered a job at another company and I went into panic mode because this was the first time that I was actually going to leave the nest, so to speak. And my manager said to me, Paul, if I don't get your resignation on my desk by the end of the day, I will personally kick you out. Not because I want you to leave, but because it will help you build more experience and to grow. So that's kind of where I come from in understanding and building this experience over years of what makes for a good approach to starting a career or pivoting into business analysis. and also into getting into your first BA job. The other thing I just want to say before I move on to the presentation is that a lot of what I'm going to show you today is kind of some methodologies that I've put together based off other methodologies. So I've adapted them for business analysis and for my coaching business, because I do a lot of coaching and mentoring in this space, helping people to develop the strategies to pivot into business analysis from a non-business role, and also when they're looking to move into a new business analyst role. So a lot of what I'm going to teach not only applies to you if you are going to move into your first business role, but also on through your career. You can still use the frameworks and the methodologies to prepare yourself for a job interview or go into a new, say, domain. I've been privileged in the work that I've done in that, whilst the majority of my initial career in business analysis was in the financial domain, and with banks and asset managers in South Africa and a little bit here in New Zealand, I've also had the opportunity to work in defence force, health, social housing, tertiary education, local government, police, and also one of the interesting piece of work that I did was actually for the Defence Force, working with the rifle team, helping them to automate rifle exams and how to assemble, disassemble, and shoot rifles. That was quite interesting. Anyway, let's get going. So, just a little bit about myself. I'm on the board of directors of the IBA in New Zealand, coming to the end of my term. I'm also a certified business analyst. I was trained at Faculty Training Institute, and I'm also privileged to say that I've partnered with Faculty Training Institute to bring business analysis to New Zealand. So we are launching our first course in January of 2022 to bring business analysis, affordable business analysis training to New Zealand. I've also got my project management degree from UCT. Although I don't practice the project manager, I used a lot in coaching business analysts when they're working with project managers, particularly difficult project managers. I also work for business volunteers, what I should say, business mentors New Zealand, where we mentor startups into the market and developing strategy and plans and all that. So yeah, so it's a space where I use business canvas modeling quite a bit with startups. And then I'm also a mentor for Victoria University. They run a program for called Masters in Business Analysis. That's the program. That program costs about $40,000 here in New Zealand. So if you think about what that is in rand terms, that's R500,000. So you guys in South Africa are pretty lucky in what you pay for education. Right. So, okay. So in this presentation, what can you expect to get out of this, and what I'm hoping that you're going to get out of this? So I want you to see how you can use the frameworks to build your business analysis value to improve opportunities. At the end of the day, when you're looking for a job as a business analyst, it's all about the exchange of value. You've got to offer a value in exchange for a value from the organization, and that value from the organization would be things like salary, benefits, and all of those kind of stuff. I'm hoping that you can see how you could probably structure and plan your business analysis job search. This is probably one of the biggest downfalls I've seen with people, is that they approach any job search, let alone business analysis, in a very unplanned for way. It's kind of like, oh, today I see this job and I apply for it. There's a lot more that goes into it when you're planning to go into a business analysis job or any career. Hopefully it will also give you some direction to launch your business career. If you may be sitting on the sidelines and saying, I'm still aspiring to be a business analyst and I'm not quite sure yet. We do talk about discovery in this presentation, so that will hopefully help you in that respect. And then hopefully I'm going to give you the framework to build your competency. So, which is kind of one of my big kind of things in my coaching and mentoring is that is business analysis competency. And I'll go into a little bit more about that. Business analysis is not made up of just knowledge. It's made up of knowledge, skills, and what we call attributes, which is your competency. Righto. And we also build a framework to build your strategy. So you should be getting that out of this presentation as well. I love this quote from John Maxwell, who's one of my favorite authors. The dream is free, but the journey will cost you something. One of the big things that I'm seeing coming through the world, and I don't know if it's a millennial thing or if it's just the COVID that's created this or what it is, but there's a sense of entitlement that has crept into the world. In other words, I'm owed this and I need to put minimal effort in getting that. But when it comes to your career, when it comes to you, like any investment, what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. So if you take like an investment of 500 Rand versus 5,000 Rand, the Rand value represents your effort. And this equal the playing field and say that your return is 10%. So you get a return of 10% of 500 Rand. What's your Rand value? 50 Rand. That's what you're getting back out of it. What's 10% of 5,000 Rand? It's 500 Rand. So for more effort, you've got more Rand value out. And it's the same thing when it comes to building your career. You need to put the investment in, and you need to put the right kind of investment into your career and into your career's progress. There are no shortcuts to a successful career. What you put in is what you're going to get out. So you can dream about that business as a career, but it's the journey of the financial investment to get trained. It's the practice of the skills to build the competency. It's the experience that you gain from all of that. That is your investment that costs you. So in other words, it's going to cost you time, it's going to cost you effort, and it's going to cost you some sort of financial investment into your career. I was just mentoring a girl yesterday who has just finished her training in business analysis here in New Zealand. Her investment cost her $40,000. That's what she was willing to put in to herself in order to become a business analyst. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to invest $40,000. I'm not saying everyone has to invest large sums of money. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make here is that you've got to invest the time, you've got to invest the effort, and you've got to invest in the right training and tools and techniques to build your competency as a business. So we look about an Olympic athlete. And I want to illustrate this as a story to kind of use a story to illustrate how we have to invest in ourselves in order to achieve something. So when we look at the Tokyo Olympic Games or any Olympic Games, and we see those athletes walk up to the starting blocks, it's quite easy to think, gee, this looks like freaking easy to them. You know, they've got natural talent, which to a certain extent, they do have natural talents. And yet they show this incredible experience on the track. They break records after records, and they inspire us with that talent. And so we forget that behind all of this is a lot of effort, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of investment that's gone into getting them to that point. In the recent Tokyo Olympics, one of the gold medalists for New Zealand was a canoeist. And I was listening to an interview on the radio with her, and her investment was 4 years of training for this particular Olympics in Tokyo. That's 4 years of her life that she spent day in and day out training. So if we look at some of the things that athletes will invest in themselves is the psychological control. Physical talent on its own is not enough. You've got to have the discipline. You've got to have the mental capacity and ability to actually stick to the pathway, to get up early in the morning to go for that 20K, 30K run as part of your training, and then continue that throughout the day. You've got to have the passion and the commitment in order to do this. A lot of athletes do this full time, particularly probably in the first world countries, where they get very small grants from government in order to train to be Olympic athletes. So this passion and this commitment is what gets them up in the morning. It's what gets them through the bad days. And you think about your career and you think about going through your career path, not every day is going to be up there. You're going to have down days. And that's where you're going to need to lean on your passion and your commitment to achieve day in and day out. It requires belief in yourself. Studies show that Olympic athletes have almost 60% more belief in themselves than the average person in the street. And that's phenomenal, that they are betting on themselves, believing in themselves. And this belief in self gives them the resilience to bounce back after defeat and to try again. And that self-belief comes from an understanding of self, an understanding of self based on facts. So for instance, if I look at myself, I would never believe in myself being a doctor for one very simple reason. I hate the sight of blood. If I see blood, you're going to have two patients in front of you. And so for me, I would never think of a doctor. But business analysis, project management, those are all things that are passionate for me. Career coaching, executive coaching, those are all things that I know that drive me, that I'm passionate about. I talked a little bit about discipline earlier. So they had that discipline. If I was looking at a training regime for a particular athlete the other day, and it's literally 10 to 12 hours a day of sprinting, exercise, coaching, and just physical investment every single day. And it's that discipline to get up every single day and to know that I've got 10 to 12 hours ahead of me training. And at the end of that 10 to 12 hours training, I possibly can't go out and have a good old party because tomorrow I've got to get up early again and do exactly the same thing again. So it's creating that discipline. Very important is the goal setting planning. Like I mentioned earlier, the canoeist, it was 4 years of plan. It was 4 years plan with goals that she had to achieve over the 4 years in order for her to qualify to get into the Olympic Games, but also to achieve the goals she wanted in the Olympic Games. I talked about training and practice. Now, you don't just turn up at the Olympic Games having read a book that tells you how to run the 100-meter dash at the Olympic Games or the 800 meters. That will give you good knowledge and basis for being a runner, an Olympic athlete. But you also got to put into practice and train, and you need to build your skill and you need to build your experience so that you can handle different situations that come up. And there's no difference in our careers as well. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan when it comes to business training of online courses that just give you a whole lot of knowledge and then give you 10 or 20 questions at the end and, hey, you know, business, because business analysis is not just about the knowledge. It's about the application of knowledge. It's about being able to do the skills and to be able to decide, when do I use this technique or this tool in this situation, or how could I adapt something to use in this situation? And that comes through building your experience and your training. Wilma Rudolph is quite a phenomenal athlete. And she made this quote or the statement that triumph can't be had without struggle. And that was based on the fact that as a child, she was told she would never walk again. She had several rounds of polio and scarlet fever and it literally could not walk. And she had to wear braces on her legs in order for her to walk at least. The doctors told her that she would never walk, but her mother kept telling her that she would. And she went on to be the fastest woman in the world in the 1960s and became the first American woman to win the 3 gold medals in a single Olympic Games. And that is phenomenal. And that comes down to the fact that she invested the time, she understood herself, she understood her limitations, she understood her values, she understood a lot about herself to say, I can actually do this, and then was willing to invest that time and the effort in order to achieve. And the rest is history, obviously, about her achievements. So when it comes to your journey as a business analyst, I use this framework a lot in helping people understand the process that they need to go to in building a business career. So I mentioned earlier that this doesn't only just apply to when you are looking for your first business as a job, but it could also apply as well when you are moving from one job to another, because we all go through this discovery phase where you are learning about the job, you're learning about the career, if it's a new career that you're moving into, and you're learning about yourself. You're not static, you move with time. You change, your behaviors, your reactions change over time as you learn more things, as you learn more about yourself. So in the discovery phase, this is where we do the research. This is where we start to learn about what we don't know about what we want to move into. So for instance, if you're going into business and you're in an aspiring business, this is where you actually need to do the research to say, what don't I know and what do I need to know in order to learn and develop, which is the next phase, where we build our skills and experience for the job or the career that we want. Now, even if you're pivoting from an existing job into a new job, there's still a learning and development phase you need to go through, because you need to learn the skills that you're going to use as a business analyst. You also need to develop the current skills that you have that are transferable into a business career. And here's the secret. Just about every job on this earth, in fact, probably every job, has an element of business analysis in it. The thing is that most people don't know it or don't realize it. I was mentoring someone at a client just yesterday, and she's not in a business role, but she's in a kind of a service center role. And we went through this framework, and we went through the discovery phase, which is a model that I will take you through a little bit later. And at the end, she said, I didn't realize how much I'm actually doing currently that is business analysis related. And why this is important? Because A, you want to develop those skills more, because that becomes part of your branding, that becomes a part of your value proposition that you're going to use when you go into the next phase of job search. But you also kind of want to, in this phase, to start to develop where the gaps are in your knowledge, where the gaps are in your training. And you want to be gaining additional knowledge, and you want to be practicing the skills and gaining experience. This comes back to my earlier point of saying that business analysis, reading a book, and then thinking that that makes your business is not enough. And for one very simple reason. If you go to any employer and they say to you, tell me what you know about business, and you say, well, I've read the following in the BABAC, or I've read the following in the 7 Steps to Mastering Business Analysis. Do you really think that you're going to get the job? Because you see, the thing in interviews is an interviewer is going to look at your past performance and your past behaviors as an indication and as a prediction of how you're going to perform in the future. So in this learn and develop phase and in the discovery phase, it's all about finding out about yourself. It's finding out where your gaps are. It's about growing and learning and positioning yourself with the right skills, with the right experience, and also practice so that you can demonstrate to an interviewer, hey, I've got the following value and I can do X, Y, and Z. It's not a case of just going to an interview and saying, yeah, I know about process modeling, but you can't demonstrate where you've used process modeling, not only developing a process model, but what did you do with that process model once you had developed it? Did you suggest to stakeholders improvements? Did you use it in a workshop or facilitate a workshop with that process model? And what were the outcomes? What did you change? What did you improve? And the good tip here is whenever you doing that, using the STAR method and quantifying what you achieved is always a good thing to do. So once you've got that development stage done, you move into your job search. And really this comes down to marketing and selling. This is about selling yourself like a commodity on the market. You need to show any employer, this is the value I've got, and this is why you need me on your team. And a lot of that also comes out of your search phase, your discovery phase, because in your discovery phase, you will also be researching job descriptions, organizations that you might want to be working with, and understanding those organizations and how you can fit into those organizations and add value to them. It's always a useful thing. A tip that I often use in business analysis interviews is when I go to an interview, I research that organization and I will look at what projects they're doing. I will look at what they are currently working on, and I'll look at my skill set and I'll say, in the interview, bring it up. Here's what I can do for you. I see you working on this project, or I see that your company recently experienced this problem, and here's my skill set that can help you in that. So what am I doing there? I'm demonstrating my first, my ability to understand them. And here's another tip in interview. Interviewers want to see that you've done the research. And a great way to show that you've done the research is by bringing in bits and pieces from the news or from their websites or projects that shows that you have researched them. And then you align your value to them, right? So let's move on. Once you've got your job, we move into what I call is the first 90 days. And this is about just fitting in and showing and demonstrating value. First 90 days, because normally there is a grace period of 3 months when you start a job, which they can terminate within 2 weeks, either way. So really what you're doing here is you're showing your employer that they have made the right choice. Once you pass your 90 days, this is where you actually just ramp up your learning. This is where you are looking at new skills, new ideas, new thoughts, new learnings, new knowledge, and you're just ramping up all of that understanding and that skill, and the cycle then repeats itself, because then eventually at some point you're going to get to a point where you've probably outgrown the job and you need to move on to a new job and you start all over again. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm really only concentrating on the first 3. The other 2 are not relevant to this, because I'm talking about how do we kickstart our career. So those are the only 3 that I will be concentrating on. So this is a model that I use often in my coaching of clients who are trying to develop a career in business analysis. And it's just a nice framework, and it's sourced from the IBA, but it's also based off another model called SODI that is really great for creating that strategy and that planning about your career search and your job search, in a more methodical way. So you're approaching it with some sort of thought process and research. On the right-hand side is really about exploring and knowing yourself, exploring the options. And a little bit later, I think in the next slide actually, is I take you through this competency pyramid that I built as well, as a way to help you build your holistic competency as a business analyst. In fact, it could apply to any career. And it also could apply to different times of your career, because as a business analyst, you will know that there are various pathways. You could move into data analyst, and you then could use the competency model and the wheel on the left-hand side in order to build that competency. So when we talk about knowing yourself, this is where we understand our personal characteristics that might influence our choices in both a learning and a work context. It's about identifying personal characteristics. And sometimes this can be very difficult. And this is where a coach and a mentor comes in, or someone that knows you very well, in order to help you to identify those things. And this is a critical element of your career development, because in the later stage on the left-hand side, when we take action, get focused, you'll see how that comes into play. So the kind of things that you're going to be looking at is, when knowing yourself, is your abilities, your aptitudes, your cognitive styles, which is your mental abilities and styles, your transferable skills, anything that's specific or technical, your personal values and your work values. Also very important to unpack it, because they speak to the kind of roles that you will apply for. We then move on to exploring the options. This is all about opportunity awareness. And this is kind of, again, this kind of fits into the previous slide of the discovery phase, where we start to look at what is available in the market. What are organizations looking for? So for business analysts, yes, they're looking for business analysts. What specifically at the moment is the market looking for in business analysts? So at the moment, for instance, in New Zealand, which is the market I'm well aware of, there is a big drive for business analysts that have got cloud experience. So that if I was a person entering business, that is probably something I would consider to add into my skill set as a business analyst, into my knowledge base as a business analyst. Another area is cybersecurity. We've had a few cyber attacks here in New Zealand, and that's also become a big thing. So I would probably include something in it, maybe doing the cyber certification from IBA or any other organization as a way of enlarging my capabilities. And you use this information in order to match your skills and your experience to the opportunity. So this is another big area where I see things falling flat, and that is where people just send out CVs left, right, and center without actually reading the spec and actually matching value for value and saying, I can do that, I've got that, I can achieve that. And the problem with that is, and particularly in a small market like New Zealand, is everyone knows everyone, and eventually you get known as this serial CV sender, and eventually your CVs just get put into the bin, and no one really looks at them. So it's about matching your value to the opportunities in the market. It's also when you are working with exploring your options, this is where you're actually starting, together with knowing yourself, is building your brand, which then translates into that marketing of self that we going to move into next. And I remember something my dad always taught me as a young man, my late dad. He says, Paul, always sell yourself like a packet of Omo. He worked for Unilever, and it's something that's always stuck with me for a very long time, still to this day. It's about your brand. It's about what you have to offer. It's what the value that you bring to the party. So kinds of ways that you can explore your options is obviously the web. You want to be looking at things like job descriptions, qualifications required, what are the barriers to entry, what are the organizations that are looking for that particular skill or looking for that particular opportunities, what are the kind of things and values that they are looking for in you as a person. Look at the industry, look at the domains, look at what is currently happening in those areas. So for instance, for me in the health sector at the moment, big thing around COVID and around apps that can manage the processes. So what out of that as a business could I actually leverage off? And then just also looking at the labor market trends. So for instance, in New Zealand at the moment, the big trend is contract work because it's very lucrative at the moment. And also companies are not wanting to hire BAs for a long period because they know that this COVID thing is going to come to an end eventually. And then they might be stuck with additional staff. So it's about understanding the market. On the left-hand side, we get across to being more focused. And this is around making the decisions based off the knowledge that you've got from knowing yourself, from exploring your options. You now need to make decisions. You need to make decisions about what is it that I am going to be doing? What is it that I am going to focus on? What can I do in this market? And where can I add value? This is all about goal setting as well. So goal setting, remember SMART as a good BA, SMART goals. And really that's around specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timeless. So you want to be setting goals. Now, quick tip on SMART goals, and we do this in NLP coaching. When we say achievable, one of the things I learned when I did my NLP training is that achievable also means that you are responsible for achieving. So for instance, if your goal is to get a business analyst job, that's your goal, I'm going to question if that's achievable for the very simple reason, is it in your control to get the business analyst job? Because here's the thing, do you make the decision whether you get that job? And the answer is no. It's the hiring manager who's going to make that decision. So that is not a SMART goal because it's not within your power because you're not in control of the final decision. So what would be probably a better SMART goal there? It'd be, I am going to apply for 10 roles each week. I'm going to contact 6 employers every single day. Something like that would be a SMART goal. And there's a reason why we do this in NLP, because it's a psychological benefit. When the goal is achievable, in other words, you own it and you're responsible for it, it creates more of that discipline, it creates more of that confidence and self-belief in yourself. We then move on to taking action. And this is really where we move into the market, we connect with employees, we use job search tools, we apply the plan and the actions that we've developed when we get focused. We also gain experience in this role because as you're working through job specs, if you come across something on a job spec that you perhaps don't have, a technique or a tool or a skill, that is and you've seen that quite regularly coming up, that is an indication to you, maybe there's a gap in my skill set that I need to work on. Now, remember, when you go to a job interview, no one expects you to have 100% of the job requirements. In fact, if I get a CV and someone says to me that in an interview that they've got all of those requirements, chances are I'm not going to hire them because no one is going to have all those 100. I look for 60 to 80%. In fact, when I hire BAs, I look more for the aptitude and the attitude and the soft skills than I actually look for the technical stuff. Right, so how do we actually go and know more about stuff? Because I think this is probably the biggest part of building your competency as a business and positioning yourself so that you can get out the starting blocks. So let's have a look at that. So I talked about my competency pyramid. And the base layer is your knowledge base, that's your approach to business. So those are your things like your BABOK, your degrees, etc. On that base, you then build the techniques and the tools and the behavioral skills in order for you to apply your knowledge base in the right situations. Upon that, you need to build practice and experience in all of those techniques and tools and behavior skills in applying the knowledge base. Because when you go to an interview, you need to demonstrate that you've got that ability, particularly as a business analyst, to apply analytical skills and to apply past experiences in different situations to come up with different answers. And right at the top, which is all about you. In that previous slide, you saw that thing about self-discovery and self-learning. This is the way that comes. This is about your values and everything that you have to offer, which also incorporates all the stuff below it. So what makes of you is not just your personality traits and your characteristics, but it's your practice, your experience. It's what you know about the techniques and tools and how to apply them. It's what you know as knowledge. Looking at that foundation layer, this is your BABOK, this is your degrees, reading domain in an industry. This is the what of business analysis. So when you move to the next level, this is the application of the practice of business. So tools of trade, the how of business analysis. This is the implementation of business. So this is how do you implement based on the previous two layers. How do you take your learning further, and how do you build experience in employees and say, yeah, I get it. This person can perform in the role that I'm doing. And this is what value you offer. This is about your confidence. This is knowing your ability, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, knowing what you like and you don't like. So for instance, for me, I know the kind of culture that I like to work in. So I don't go for certain jobs where I know that the culture doesn't fit myself. In fact, just yesterday, I was offered a lead principal BA role, and I turned it down because when I read the spec, I thought, none of that speaks to what I am about. Who am I? In New Zealand, the Maoris call it the mana, which is what you bring to the party. When you look at this a little bit further, the top is your values. This is what I value in the world. And you want to match what you value to where you're going to. Trust me, if your values don't match an organization, the organization will quickly pick it up in an interview, because interviewers are trained to look to see where the value and the culture fit is happening. And the rest of that is the value. That's the value that you bring to the party. So you want to build your value. You want to build a value that matches the value an organization is looking for. And you also want to understand what you value in the work situation so that you can match to the right culture and to the right organizations. So when you're preparing yourself for business analyst role or for any job interview, things that you can look at is course training. When it comes to things like course training, I am very much in favor of courses, things like what Faculty Training Institute offer, Victoria University and Wellington offer, where it not only gives you the theory, but it gives you the practical knowledge, the hands-on experience. Because here's the thing, that what you learn within that environment and what you put into practice actually is used as experience when you go into interviews. And so things like assignments and proper exams that test your knowledge are important. Another thing that you want to be doing is going to be building your experience in your current role. You don't need the title business analyst, be able to practice business analysis. The girl that I was mentoring yesterday, I showed her how she can actually use process flow mapping in a current role that she's working in order to gain more experience and to show her role. Volunteers, internships, all in this building experience space that can help you build that experience. So you want to be building your value that you can demonstrate on the CV. And you want to be updating your LinkedIn profiles. You want to be getting references from people that know you, that can attest to your business analysis experience, even when you're not in a business role. Get them to write, truthfully, references about you that show and demonstrate your ability as a business analyst. Certification does play a role, but in my humble opinion, a certification only plays a role later in your career, maybe at the CBAP, CCBA level. I've written a few blogs on the ECBA and why I'm not totally convinced it's a viable way on its own to enter business analyst. It's great for gaining knowledge and approach to business analyst, but on its own, it's not to open up a business analyst role. We look at the typical business analyst move. There are 8 steps to it. So we talked about understanding the role and self. We talked about gaining the required skills in order to match the market opportunities on what is out there. We talked about identifying and developing the desired transferable skills. So this is identifying what I've done in my previous roles that are non-business related and what I can transfer into a business as role, but also what other transferable skills could I develop? We talked about assessing the opportunities that you have in hand, maybe within your current organization or outside of your organization. What are the opportunities and how do you match your value to those opportunities in order to open up doors? Understanding the business. So that's about understanding the organization that you're wanting to go and work in, understanding the organization that you're currently, so that you can demonstrate by saying where there's an organizational problem or when an organized project happening, that you have certain skills and value that you can add to that organization. It's by getting hands-on experience even whilst you're not in a business role. And there are plenty of ways that you can apply business techniques to develop those transfer skills like process modeling, business canvas modeling, workshop facilitation, or just some of the things that you could actually do where you are right now. And then we've also been talking about developing your plan. Have a plan of action. How are you going to do this? How are you going to measure your progress? And then execute and refine the plan as you go along. Once you add it, don't forget all of the, when we talk about transferable skills, don't forget all about the soft skills, analytical thinking and problem solving. How can you demonstrate it in your current roles? Facilitation, which I talked about earlier, communication skills. How can you demonstrate your communication skills? One of the big things I love about the Faculty Training Institute course is that your first 5 days is all about communication. It's probably the thing that launched me to actually do presentations like this, because prior to that, you wouldn't see me dead up here doing any kind of presentation at all. Stakeholder management, probably top of the list. It's a question that comes up in virtually every single interview. And in fact, it's my number one question when I interview business analysts, because you know what? If you've got good people skills, the rest of it I can teach you. The rest of it we can get you in. So stakeholder management and people skills. Leadership influence. You got to understand that you as a business analyst, even as a junior business, you are a leader. You are an influencer. You're helping people make decisions. So you want to be developing those skills and being able to demonstrate your experience in that. And then organizational skills, which really comes down to how do you plan your day. In the back, we talk about business planning and monitoring, and this is kind of where that fits into it. I want to close off just with this final quote, and that is, the pen that writes your life story must be held in your own hand. And this is really about you are in control of your career. You need to take control, not the recruiters, not your manager, not anyone. You need to be in control of it. And when it comes to failure, you have a choice. You can either stand up or you can stay down. Failure is inevitable, but failure is also one of the greatest teachers in life that leads to success. Virtually every successful person out there has had more failures than they have had successes. That is part of the learning process. To write your own storyline, you need to have a plan and you need to have a strategy, and you need to execute that plan and that strategy. Righto, 4 minutes over time. Sorry guys, but yeah, we got there. I hope that helps you. Obviously in 45 minutes, not a lot, too much depth I can go into, but yeah, let's ask some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for taking us through this presentation. I hope even the people who will be getting into interviews very soon, you know, they're just gonna win them, you know, based on every tip and each and every information and insights that you have provided us with. This was incredible. And I'm just gonna hand over to Sawan and Tepo, who will be reading out the questions for us. Tepo?
Thanks very much, Lesego. And a very interesting presentation. Thank you so much, Paul, and for waking up so early. I have a couple of questions in the Q&A. We'll start there and then we'll go back to the chats. The first one from Zain Van Sale. He says, have you used guru.com before? And do you have any advice on how to get your first freelance job or task? Can the experience gained on that platform be used for your career or first full-time job?
Sorry, can you just repeat what was the platform called?
Guru.com.
Sorry?
Guru.com.
Guru.com. No, I've never used Guru.com. I can't really answer that question because I've never used it, but I can answer around freelance work. So I've been mentoring a guy here in New Zealand that the last 4 positions he's had was all freelance work. There are 2 things you had to note about freelance work, and that is that it's good for gaining experience. It's good for building your CV, but also you want to be careful that you don't get known as the freelance guy. Remember, I talked about building your brand and building what you offer the market. And so at some point, you actually need to start making decisions. Say, I'm not going to go for another freelance job. I've built enough experience and I actually need to get a paying job. Because recruiters will, and particularly organizations will see you as a freelancer, and that's what they will hire you as. After about 4, we actually made a decision that his next job would be a fully paid non-freelance job. And he is now working for an organization in New Zealand, and he actually did exactly what I suggested in the presentation. He saw cybersecurity as a niche for him to go into. And when he did that, and he did some skills training around that, he was able to move into a business role specializing in cybersecurity. I hope that answered the question. I think so.
Okay. Maybe Zain, can we just give you an opportunity to unmute yourself and tell us if you're happy or you have a follow-up?
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Zain.
Yeah, it's me. You definitely answered my question there. I've applied for a few positions in the past there. I think I'm sitting on 2 or 3 applications already, and a recruiter actually told me one day that it would be a good starting point to start doing some freelancing jobs on that platform. So I've created a profile, and I was just wanting to see if it would be worthwhile my efforts putting in there, because after 2 or 3 attempts, you do become a little bit disheartened. But thanks for that advice. I'm going to put in a bit of effort on that platform.
Yeah. So Zain, just another piece of advice maybe there is, remember, I said in that one slide, execute and refine. This is where the refine comes in. If it's not working for you, figure out why it's not working for you and what you need to change in order to make it work for you. And it might be that the platform's right, but maybe your offering's wrong, or it might be the platform's wrong, and your offering is right, but it's not in the right place, in the right market. So that's kind of the research that you kind of need to do and start to figure out.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is from Batsiba. The question is, tools such as Excel, PowerPoint, and Power BI seem imperative for success as a BA. How would you recommend putting those skills into practice and practicing, even though as a junior, one may not have much exposure in order to practice on the job, but realize must be ready to display the skill when required?
Okay, so the first thing I would say, I'm not sure I agree entirely that they're imperative, those tools for business. Certainly Excel and Word and being able to operate them, yes, I mean, but that goes for just about any job today, being able to use Power BI. I don't believe is a necessity for every business role. And just to prove the point, go and look at how many job applications don't require Power BI. Probably where Power BI comes into play as an example, would be when you're working as a data analyst, or when you're working as a business that's heavily involved in data and making analytical decisions based on data. So to answer your second part of your question, how would you gain experience? So I'm going to answer this by my own personal experience. What I did when I was working for a company here in New Zealand as a consultant, and we had to apply for or put in a RFP for work at a particular client, and I needed some Power BI experience. So what I did is I went and did some online courses, and I can really hear people say, well, you're not in favor of online course, let me disqualify before, so hold your horses. So I went and did some online Power BI courses, and then I downloaded some data from NZ Stats, which here in New Zealand, you can easily do reverse whole lot of data. And this is where I'm saying online courses on their own are not enough. I then applied what I learned in the online courses, and I created data views, data dashboards, and all that. And we used that as a portfolio of evidence to show kind of the understanding that I had of Power BI, and as a business analyst, what I could bring to that value. So those are ways that you could actually build your experience. If you can get hold of, and there are probably a lot of internet resources out there that you can go and download data sets and apply your skills. Go do like maybe a LinkedIn course, maybe even a Udemy course, but also then build the experience and the practice by applying that, by creating something. I always walk into an interview with some sort of portfolio of evidence. And that might be a requirement spec that I wrote. It might be a product roadmap. And in this particular instance, we actually took a laptop and showed them what we'd built in Power BI as a way to show our skill and our value. Obviously, remove any references to your past employers or anything that is sensitive, but as a way just to show, here's what I can do. So I've always taken that into an interview. Hopefully that helps you.
Cool. We're fast running out of time. The next one is from Emma. Emma asks, where does one get online volunteer opportunities for business analysts in order to gain experience and practice techniques?
I've not seen anything in South Africa that I know of. I know here in Wellington, for instance, we have a couple of organizations that do volunteer advertising and internship advertising. But there's another way to volunteer. And this, I can tell you, a lot of us who have got experience in business analysis have got into business analysis this way. And it's the way I got into business. Volunteer for a project in your existing organization where you can apply business analysis skills. That's probably the easiest way if you want to volunteer for something, is within your current organization. I volunteered for a reporting project. And yeah, it required me to work a 12-hour day for 3 to 6 months. But it's the investment I was willing to put in order to get the experience. And at the end of 6 months, guess what happened? They offered me a BA role. And that's how I got in.
Okay, we have a last question from Lucy. She's saying, I have an interview coming up in a week for an intermediate business analyst position. How can I best prepare for an interview if I do not have the necessary experience?
So just quick before I answer that question, guys, if you want to go over time, I can stay another 5-10 minutes. So that's cool with me. I know it's past your bedtime, but yeah. So to answer the question, when you're preparing for an interview, you want to be working through the job spec. I run a workshop now and then called the Value Blueprint, in which I teach people how to look at their past jobs and look at a job spec and extract experience from their past jobs and apply it to a business analyst role. And that's quite okay to do, because remember the Babcock talks about business being a set of activities and tasks, not about the role or the title. So, for instance, I might work in a call center, and I get asked a question, tell me a time when you had to solve a problem and how you went about it. I could go into my call center experience and say, well, a customer phoned in with this particular problem, and this is how I went about actually resolving that problem for that customer, and this is the outcome of that problem. Again, just want to mention the STAR method. Go research that. Very good way of answering questions. But also, when you answer, quantify that outcome. So, for instance, in that particular example I just gave you, if you could state something like, I got an excellent review from the customer because I solved the problem, and then you go into the STAR method of answering that question. So it's about looking for those transferable skills in your past jobs and your past careers and actually bringing them to the front. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And it's okay in an interview to say, I don't really have it, but if I was in that position, I might, and then go into a answer of how you could approach it. Rather answer the question by saying, honestly, look, I don't have, but this is how I might do it.
Cool. Paul, there was a hand up from Ashley. Ashley, can you unmute yourself and talk and ask? Ashley?
Calling Ashley.
Might have scared him, Paul. Okay, we'll look into the other chats while Ashley gets organized. I think there was another one here, sorry. From Nobile. Nobile asked, do you perhaps have a framework on how to best market yourself?
So yeah, so I do have a framework. Don't have it at hand at the moment on marketing yourself. I am just finished off a recording about marketing yourself on LinkedIn, which will go up as a free masterclass on my website, probably maybe next week. Yeah, so contact me offline. My email address is on the screen at the moment, and then I can just maybe flick you something about marketing yourself around that.
Okay, Sarina just posted a question as well for you, Paul. She's saying, I've never worked on a project from start to end or by myself as a BA, and that makes me feel uncomfortable to take on independent business analyst roles. Any advice on that?
First of all, don't feel uncomfortable about not having worked on a project end to end. I think I can count on one hand the number of projects that I've worked end to end on. The last project I worked on, I came in halfway through the project and I left before the project ended. It's the nature of the work, because remember, not every BA has the same value of it. So for instance, in the last project, I came on it when they needed a particular skill that I had. And then the project went further and there were some other skills that I could offer. And then it got to a point where I said, look, okay, I don't think there's much more value I can offer to you on this. And therefore, it's time for me to move on. So the only advice I can give you is, do not feel uncomfortable with that. Embrace it. That is part of the nature of the job. Remember, business analysts, we work in ambiguity and in uncertainty, and it's quite okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul. I think that was the last question now. And thank you to everybody who actually stayed, for the extra 5 minutes. And good evening to everybody. This is